the soft side. Okay, Norman, I have another question for you. We have a lot of talk about ethics and morality and how business, what they should do and how they should be good citizens. And I'm having sometimes a conflict. I go, yeah, okay. So are we going to enforce whose morality is it and whose ethics? And where does all this play into the living organization? Where does morality, ethics play in the living organization?
Well, that's that's an interesting question. Actually, I've actually thought about that. You know, I said that the living organization framework was not designed to address issues such as ethics or morality or sustainability or proper good corporate citizenry or any of that. It was designed to create results. But here's the interesting thing that I've discovered. If you treat an organization like a person, like a living being, and you look at its personality, all of a sudden you're asking the same questions you ask of what makes a good citizen? And how does one citizen interact with another citizen? And remember, the living organization was designed to create better bottom line results. And in the last Q&A section, you asked me, how do we do that? But we're doing it because we're looking at each individual, each team, each department as a living being unto itself. And the organization itself is a living being. So now the questions of morality, the questions of ethics, the questions of sustainability, of good citizenship. What would you expect of an individual? Go back to the days of the farmer and the sheep herder. How does the rancher and the sheep herder learn to live together? We found a way to do that. So now an organization, when you think of it as a living being, the questions of ethics and morality fall into place. They're good questions. And I'm not going to say it should be one model over another, or here's my ethical stance. But it is within the context of the living organization framework, thinking of an organization as a living being, to ask the question, what makes a good citizen? And then all of a sudden you start answering that question. How do I, as a living member of the community, because that's what an organization is, it's really a living member of the community. How do I, now, as an individual, I have the responsibility to provide for my family, to make an income. I have in some spiritual traditions, I would have the obligation to tithe to the community, if I so believe that. Most people who are successful naturally become philanthropic, because that's what it means to be a good member of society. So what if an organization was viewed as a living being? Wouldn't it start to think the same way as you and me and all other people, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett? So if I'm a head of a $50 billion corporation, and I'm on the board of directors of this, and I'm responsible for the well-being of this living entity and its role in society, because as a board member, that's my responsibility to make sure this child, this living entity, is growing up and being mature and contributing to society in a positive way. Then wouldn't I worry about, is it raping the resources out of our planet? Is it acting in good faith to all minorities and all people that it interacts with? Is it acting in good faith and caring about the people it serves and the people that it takes care of? Of course I would, right? Otherwise, that'd be like a bad parent if I didn't worry about those things. So it's inherent in the design of the living organization, just thinking, and that's why it's such an important paradigm shift. Just shifting the way I look at what an organization is, not only produces better results, but produces better societal living beings, better organizations.
Beautiful. And okay, and one last question, that's probably even tougher. How do you get somebody to shift that mindset if they're not naturally? If they inherently say, I don't care about living beings, like what I care is about production and so on and so on, is there a way to actually create
Well,
an epiphany for them?
no, not the example you stated. Um, if a leader of an organization doesn't is only cares about profit and doesn't want to shift, then you can't make them. I can't make somebody who is tight-fisted and selfish and egotistical altruistic. It's just not possible. But typically what happens in all living beings, and it happens in organizations as well, is they reach a point where being selfish, being egotistical, being greedy doesn't work for them. And what's happening in society is the machine paradigm, as I like to call it, isn't working. It's just not producing the results. So I would argue that don't worry about being a living being to do good in the world. Worry about leading a living organization to produce better results for today's environment, because that's what this whole model was designed for. Now, how do you shift? That's a second question in some regards. So can you make somebody who doesn't want to shift? The answer is I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are a lot of leaders today who are recognizing that the old model doesn't work. That we're seeing a big shift in consciousness in society overall, worldwide, with the COVID pandemic and with the racial inequality, and we've been talking about income inequality. I mean, the old institutions, and especially the institution of business, just isn't responding to today's world very well. And it's one of the reasons they're having trouble making money, right? And why they're struggling and why they can't pivot fast enough in COVID. So there's a call for a shift happening anyway. And if you shift to the living organization framework as a framework, you'll get all these other byproducts, which are positive for society and positive for the employees and all of that. And you'll do it because you're getting the results you need to keep your company growing and thriving. Now, the second part of that is, how does a person shift? Well, one of the things I discovered is it's really counterinstinctual. Any paradigm shift, any significant turning of the lens around, looking at the world from a completely different point of view, is really very difficult. The metaphor I often use is skiing, because I used to be a skier, and you watch. I mean, if you think about it, I, as an individual, as a human being, have learned to walk down the side of a hill by leaning my weight into the hill. Otherwise, I'll fall and crash and burn and kill myself. So now I'm going to tell you, put on skis, and you'll go down the hill faster, easier, more efficiently, less energy used. You just let the skis do their own work. Oh, by the way, there's only one change you have to make. You have to lean downhill, so you put the weight on the tips of the skis, and that's what lets the skis do their thing, right? But it's the same thing here. I just talked about it the first video on trust the context field, learn to work with the context field. So the parallel is learn to lean downhill. But everything a leader today has learned is to manage by activity, not by context. So it's counterinstinctual. I'm stuck. I've got to make a decision. What am I going to do? I'm going to take some activity. But that's okay if you maintain the context field around it and you're using context to guide your choice of activity. But if you're just running around from activity to activity, you're again losing the understanding of the three fields that are affecting your outcome. And so you're going to sludge your way down the hill in the deep snow, leaning uphill, or you're going to put on skis and think you're leaning downhill, but really leaning uphill. And so you've got this counter-instinctual need. And the way we address that at Quantum Leaders is, again, going back to what I said in the previous video, We do it iteratively. We take you, it's like taking you on a bunny slope, to use the skiing metaphor, and let you feel comfortable with new skills in a small area, just like I did with the CEO of the example I used, right? I had to deal with him as well as the salespeople, and I had to teach him how to trust a different way of being. He had to shift his mindset. Well, okay, we'll do a little piece. And then he feels comfortable with that. And then we take him on an intermediate hill. We take a little bit more complicated situation. And then eventually they go, oh, this stuff's easy. Boy, I can ski down the hill in no time flat. I can shift my company. I can change the paradigm. I can pivot quickly because I developed these new skills. So.
Understand. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks.
You're welcome.